Luke Miller slid out from beneath the rusted Ford, motor oil pooling beneath his weathered hands on the cracked concrete. The sharp staccato of designer heels shattered the afternoon stillness of his small-town Ohio garage. She materialized like an apparition from another universe, ivory silk blazer unmarked by the grime surrounding her. Golden hair twisted into an elegant chignon that caught the filtered sunlight streaming through dusty windows. Her cerulean eyes held depths of barely contained anguish. Between trembling fingers, she clutched a pearl-white wedding invitation, its pristine edges slowly surrendering to her grip. "I need to hire you," she whispered, each word carrying the weight of unspoken desperation. Luke straightened, leaving streaks of black across his faded denim coveralls. The distance between their worlds stretched infinite in that moment. "For what?" he asked, his voice rough from years of honest labor. She raised the invitation like a white flag of surrender, golden script gleaming in the amber light. "To be my date at my ex-husband's wedding." The wrench slipped from Luke's grasp, clattering against the concrete with a sharp, metallic ring. He studied her face, the way her jaw tightened when she spoke about her ex-husband, the slight tremor in her lower lip she tried to conceal. "Lady, I think you got the wrong guy," he said, wiping his hands on a shop rag. "I fix transmissions, not broken hearts." Her laugh came out hollow, brittle as autumn leaves. "I'm not looking to fix anything. I just need someone who doesn't know my history. Someone who won't look at me like I'm damaged goods." Luke glanced toward the small office where 9-year-old Sam sat hunched over homework, his slight frame barely filling the oversized desk chair. The boy's breathing had been labored again this morning, a subtle wheeze that made Luke's chest tighten with worry. The medical bills from their last emergency room visit sat unpaid on his kitchen table, red-inked reminders of how precarious their situation had become. "How much are we talking about?" The words left his mouth before his conscience could stop them. Claire's eyes flickered with something that might have been relief. $5,000. Cash. For one afternoon. The number hung in the air between them like smoke. Sam's surgery would cost $8,000 after insurance, and Luke's savings account held exactly $243. "When's the wedding?" he heard himself ask. "This Saturday, 2:00 at St. Mary's." Claire opened her purse, revealing more cash than Luke had seen in months. "Everyone in that town knew me before I became successful. They remember the girl who got left behind. They'll be watching, waiting for me to fall apart. I need someone who makes it look like I've moved on." The office door creaked, and Sam appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes with the back of his small hand. "Dad?" I finished my math. "Can we go home now?" The boy's face was pale, with dark circles that had been deepening over the past few weeks. Claire's entire demeanor shifted the moment she saw Sam. Her shoulders softened, and something maternal flickered in her eyes. "Hi there," she said, her voice losing its desperate edge. "You must be Sam." The boy nodded shyly, instinctively stepping closer to his father. "I'm Claire." "I was just talking to your dad about some work." Sam looked between them with the uncanny intuition of children who'd learned to read adult emotions too early. "Are you okay, Miss Claire?" "You look sad." The simple question seemed to crack something open in Claire's carefully constructed facade. She knelt down to Sam's eye level, her designer heels scraping against the concrete floor. "Sometimes grown-ups get sad about things that happened a long time ago," she said gently. "But talking to your dad is helping." Luke felt heat creep up his neck at the casual observation about his character. Claire was watching him with new interest, her head tilted slightly, as if she were seeing him for the first time. "I have a condition," she said suddenly. "If you agree to this, Sam comes with us." To the wedding. Luke started to protest, but she held up a hand. "A man who brings his child looks settled. Responsible. It makes the whole thing more believable." She paused, glancing at Sam, who was now examining a carburetor with intense curiosity. Besides, he shouldn't be alone if he's not feeling well. The casual observation about Sam's health hit Luke like a punch to the gut. How had this stranger noticed what he'd been trying to convince himself wasn't that serious? "All right," Luke said, the word feeling foreign on his tongue. "We'll do it, but I have conditions too. We keep this professional. No pretending when Sam's not around. And Sam doesn't know this is fake. As far as he's concerned, you're just someone I'm seeing." Claire's fingers paused over her phone screen. "Someone you're seeing?" She repeated slowly. "That means we'll need to look like we actually know each other. Like there's history between us." The word history seemed to carry extra weight, though Luke couldn't understand why. Friday evening arrived with Luke reviewing the backstory Claire had texted him. They'd met 6 months ago when her architectural firm hired him to restore a vintage car. She appreciated his craftsmanship. He was impressed by her intelligence. Simple. Believable. Except nothing about this situation felt simple anymore. Sam was in bed early again, complaining of chest pain that Luke told himself was probably just growing pains. His phone rang, Claire's name appearing on the cracked screen. "Getting cold feet?" she asked without preamble. "Just reviewing our story," he replied, "though I'm starting to think this is crazy." Her laugh was softer than he'd heard before, almost vulnerable. "Luke, can I ask you something? Why did you really agree to this?" The question caught him off guard. He could have said it was about the money. It was mostly about the money. But something in her tone suggested she was looking for a different kind of honesty. "Because Sam lit up when you paid attention to him," Luke found himself saying. "And because you noticed he wasn't feeling well before I was ready to admit it myself." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of admissions neither had expected to make. "He needs to see a cardiologist," Claire said finally. "I know you know that. I can see it in the way you watch him, the way you calculate every breath he takes." Luke's grip tightened on the phone. "We have an appointment next month." "After I can figure out how to pay for it." "Luke, no," he said firmly. "Whatever you're thinking, no. This is business. Nothing more." But even as he said it, he knew something had shifted between them. Claire was no longer just a desperate woman willing to pay for companionship. She was someone who saw through his carefully constructed pretense that everything was fine. Saturday arrived with crystalline autumn air and the kind of golden light that made even Luke's weathered neighborhood look picturesque. Sam moved slowly through their morning routine, his small face pale but determined. "Do I look okay, Dad?" the boy asked, adjusting his clip-on tie for the 10th time. Luke knelt down and straightened the tie, fighting back the wave of emotion that threatened to overwhelm him. "You look perfect, buddy." Like a movie star. Claire's car pulled into their driveway at exactly 2 o'clock, a sleek black SUV. She emerged wearing the midnight blue dress from their shopping trip, her hair swept up in an elegant style. But it was the way she smiled at Sam that made Luke's breath catch genuine warmth, that transformed her features from merely beautiful to something approaching radiant. "Ready for an adventure?" she asked Sam, who nodded eagerly despite the dark circles under his eyes. St. Mary's Church rose from the centre of Millbrook like something from a postcard, its Gothic spires piercing the cloudless October sky. As they walked toward the church entrance, Claire slipped her hand into his, her fingers surprisingly cold despite the warm afternoon. "Showtime," she murmured, but her smile was genuine as she looked down at Sam walking between them. The interior of St. Mary's hummed with restrained excitement. Luke felt every eye in the church turn towards them as they entered, a collective assessment that made his skin crawl. But Claire walked with her chin raised, her hand steady in his, projecting an aura of quiet dignity that silenced the whispered conversations around them. They settled into a pew near the back, Sam between them, his small body leaning heavily against Luke's side. "You okay, buddy?" Luke whispered, pressing his hand to Sam's forehead. The boy was warm, but not feverish. The processional began with Trevor Hamilton standing at the altar in a tuxedo, his golden hair gleaming under the stained glass light. He was undeniably handsome in the way that suggested good genetics and expensive grooming. As the bride appeared at the back of the church, a collective intake of breath rippled through the congregation. But Luke noticed that Claire didn't turn to watch the bride's approach. Instead, she kept her attention focused on Sam, who had perked up at the spectacle despite his fatigue. As the ceremony progressed, Luke found himself stealing glances at Claire. She sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap, but he could see the tension in the set of her shoulders. When Sam shifted restlessly and whispered, "Dad, my chest hurts," Luke felt a spike of panic. "How much does it hurt, buddy?" He whispered back, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. "Like there's something heavy sitting on it," Sam replied, his small hand pressing against his sternum. Claire was on her feet before Luke could respond. "I think some fresh air would be good for all of us," she said quietly. They slipped out of the church during the exchange of rings, the autumn air hitting them like a blessing. Sam immediately seemed to improve, his colour returning as he took deep breaths of the crisp October air. "Better?" Luke asked, kneeling down to his son's eye level. Sam nodded, but Luke could see the exhaustion in his young face. "Dad, am I sick? Like really sick?" The question he'd been dreading, delivered with the devastating honesty that only children possessed. Luke felt Claire's presence beside him, a steadying force he hadn't expected to need. "You have something called a heart murmur, buddy. It just means your heart has to work a little harder than other people's, but the doctors can fix it." "With surgery?" Sam's eyes were wide but not frightened. "Yeah, with surgery, but not until after Christmas." Sam nodded solemnly, then looked up at Claire. "Will you be there?" "At Christmas?" The question caught both adults off guard. "That's up to your dad, sweetheart." But I hope so. The reception was held at the Millbrook Country Club, a sprawling facility that reeked of old money and older traditions. Claire moved through the room with the confidence of someone who'd been born to these spaces, even if she'd chosen to leave them behind. But their peaceful entrance was interrupted by a woman whose name tag read Margaret. "Claire Elizabeth Whitman," the woman said, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Well, I'll be damned." "Hello, Margaret," Claire replied smoothly. Margaret's eyes slid to Luke with undisguised curiosity. And who might this handsome gentleman be? "This is Luke Miller," Claire said, her voice carrying just enough warmth to suggest intimacy. "And this is his son, Sam." Margaret's gaze sharpened as she studied Luke's face. "Miller, Are you related to the Millers who own the dairy farm? Different Millers, Luke said evenly. I'm in automotive repair. Sam tugged on Claire's dress. Miss Claire, I need to sit down, he whispered, his face pale and dotted with sweat. They found seats at a table near the back, Sam between them, leaning heavily against Luke's side. The boy was clearly struggling, but his eyes lit up at the dessert table. Can I have the piece with the flower? He asked, pointing to a slice of cake decorated with a delicate sugar rose. Of course you can, Claire said, serving him a generous portion. As Sam focused on his cake, she moved closer to Luke. I owe you an apology, she said quietly. I didn't think about how uncomfortable this would be for you. I can handle a few snobs, Luke replied. But I'm worried about Sam. He's getting tired, and all this stimulation isn't good for him. As if summoned by their conversation, Sam swayed slightly on his feet, his cake plate nearly slipping from his small hands. Luke caught him quickly, feeling the boy's rapid heartbeat against his chest. But before they could make their exit, Trevor Hamilton was walking toward them, his new bride on his arm. Claire, Trevor said, his voice carrying across the immediate area. I'm so glad you could make it. His eyes slid to Luke with obvious curiosity. And you brought a friend. How wonderful. Amanda Sterling Hamilton clung to her new husband's arm, her smile never wavering. Claire, you look amazing, she said with enthusiasm that managed to sound both genuine and condescending. We were just saying how surprised we were to hear you'd moved back to Ohio. Actually, I find small-town life much more authentic, Claire replied smoothly. There's something refreshing about people who value substance over appearance. Luke here runs his own business. He believes in fixing things that are worth saving rather than throwing them away when they become inconvenient. Sam, who had been quietly observing the adult conversation, suddenly spoke up. Are you the man who made Miss Claire sad? The innocent question fell into the conversation like a stone into still water, creating ripples of shocked silence. Sam, Luke said gently, but Claire knelt down to the boy's level, her face soft with genuine affection. It's okay, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt other people, but that doesn't mean we can't forgive them and move on. She stood gracefully, her eyes meeting Trevor's once more. Congratulations on your marriage, Trevor. I wish you both every happiness. Without waiting for a response, she took Sam's hand in one of hers and Luke's arm with the other. Gentlemen, I believe I promised you both a dance before we leave. The dance floor was nearly empty, most guests preferring to cluster around the bar. Claire led them to the center, where a small orchestra played standards that belonged to an earlier, more elegant era. Sam looked uncertain. I don't know how to dance, he admitted. That's okay, Claire said, kneeling down to his level. Dancing is just moving to music in a way that makes you happy. She took his small hands in hers and began swaying gently to the music. Luke watched, transfixed, as this woman who'd hired him to be her fake boyfriend transformed into someone who genuinely cared about his son's happiness. When the song changed to something slower, Claire looked up at Luke. Your turn, she said. Luke had never considered himself a dancer, but there was something about the way Claire looked at him that made him feel capable of more than he'd ever attempted. They moved together with surprising ease, her body following his lead as if they'd been dancing together for years. Thank you, Claire whispered, so quietly that only Luke could hear. For what? For letting me pretend, just for today, that I know what it feels like to have a family. The words hit Luke like a physical blow, revealing depths of loneliness he'd never suspected. Sam tugged on both their hands. "Can we all dance together?" he asked. "Like a real family?" They formed a small circle on the dance floor, all three moving to the gentle rhythm. But as the song wound down and Sam began to droop with exhaustion, reality reasserted itself. The drive back to Luke's house was quiet, Sam sleeping in the back seat with the peaceful expression of a child who'd had the perfect day. "So that's it?" Claire asked as they turned onto his street. "The job's done." The question carried more weight than a simple inquiry about their business arrangement. "I guess so," Luke said finally. She pulled into his driveway and turned off the engine, but made no move to leave. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Sam sleep. "Luke," she said finally, "what I said back there about Sam needing to see a cardiologist—" "I know," he interrupted. "And I will. After I figure out how to pay for it." Claire turned to face him fully. "What if I told you there was a way to take care of that?" "The surgery, the recovery, everything." Luke felt his stomach clench. "I'd say that sounds too good to be true." "It's not charity," she said firmly. "It's gratitude. For today, for letting me borrow your family for an afternoon, for showing me what real kindness looks like." "There's something I need to tell you," Claire said, her voice taking on a quality that made Luke's attention sharpen. "About why I really came to you. Why I chose your garage." Luke felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What do you mean?" Claire took a shaky breath, her composure finally cracking. 7 years ago I was driving back from a job interview in Columbus. It was raining, and I was upset. I took Route 23 instead of the interstate. My car hit a patch of standing water and hydroplaned. I went off the road, rolled 3 times, and ended up upside down in a ditch. The car caught fire. Luke's world tilted on its axis. He knew this story. He'd lived this story. "There was a man," Claire continued, tears starting to track down her cheeks. "He pulled me out of the car before it exploded. He stayed with me until the ambulance came, kept me conscious. But when I woke up in the hospital, he was gone." The memory crashed over Luke like a wave. The Honda Civic, red paint barely visible under the mud and rain. The young woman trapped inside, blood running down her face, her blue eyes wide with terror. "I spent 2 years trying to find him," Claire whispered. "I hired private investigators, put ads in newspapers, but he disappeared like he was never there. All I had was a first name, Luke, and the memory of kind brown eyes and gentle hands." Luke's throat felt like it was closing up. "Claire, when I drove into your garage Thursday afternoon, I recognized you immediately. The eyes, the hands, the voice. You're him, aren't you? You're the man who saved my life." Luke closed his eyes, remembering that night, the rain, the fear, the desperate need to get the unconscious woman out of the burning car before it was too late. "Yeah," he said finally, his voice hoarse with emotion. "That was me." The admission seemed to break something open in Claire. She buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "I can't believe I found you. After all these years, I can't believe you're real." Luke reached across the space between them, his calloused hand covering her smaller ones. "Hey, it's okay. You don't need to cry about it." "You don't understand," she said, looking up at him with tears streaming down her face. "That night changed everything for me. I was ready to give up, to come back home and settle for whatever life my parents thought I should have. But you saved me, and not just from the car. You saved me from giving up on myself, Sam stirred in the back seat, mumbling something in his sleep that sounded like Princess Claire. The sound of his son's voice broke through Luke's emotional paralysis. "This changes things," he said quietly. "Between us. I know this is a lot to process. I know it changes the nature of our arrangement," Claire said. Luke looked back at Sam, still sleeping peacefully, then at Claire, whose vulnerability in this moment was more beautiful than any dress she'd worn. "Yeah," he said, "it does change things. That night after I pulled you out of the car, you grabbed my hand. You said something. Do you remember what it was?" Claire's eyes widened with recognition. "I said, 'Don't leave me.' Yeah, and I told you I wouldn't. But then the paramedics came, and there were cops and questions, and I broke that promise. I left. But you didn't really," Claire said softly, "because here you are. Somehow, 7 years later, I found my way back to you." Sam stirred again, waking up enough to register his surroundings. "Are we home?" he asked sleepily. "Yeah, buddy, we're home," Luke said, but his eyes remained locked on Claire's. "Miss Claire, are you coming inside?" Sam asked. "It's dark, and Dad always says you shouldn't drive when you're tired." Luke looked at Claire, his question unspoken but clear. "You should come in," he heard himself saying, "at least for a while." Inside Luke's small house, Sam headed straight for the couch, still in his wedding clothes but too tired to care. Claire stood in the middle of the living room, taking in the details that revealed the life Luke had built with Sam. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator, visible through the kitchen doorway. Books were stacked everywhere, some clearly Sam's, others technical manuals. It was the kind of lived-in chaos that spoke of real life, real love, real family. "Coffee?" Luke offered. As Luke busied himself with the coffee maker, Claire studied the photographs on the refrigerator. Most were of Sam at various ages, but there were a few that included a woman with Luke's dark eyes. "Your wife?" Claire asked quietly. "My mother," Luke corrected. "She passed away when Sam was 5. Sam's mother left when he was 3. She decided motherhood wasn't for her." The simple statement carried years of hurt and struggle. "Luke," Claire said, setting down her coffee without taking a sip. "What I said earlier about paying for Sam's surgery, I meant it. 7 years ago, you saved my life without asking for anything in return. Do you have any idea what that kind of selfless act means to someone? I built my entire career on the foundation of that night. Every success I achieved, I did it because someone showed me that there was still genuine goodness in the world." "That doesn't mean you owe me anything," Luke said. "Doesn't it? Don't you think 7 years of wandering might have created a debt that can only be paid with the same kind of selfless generosity?" From the living room, they could hear Sam's breathing, deeper now as he slipped into sleep. "He's going to need that surgery soon," Claire continued. "His symptoms are getting worse. You know it, and I know it. How long are you going to let pride stand between your son and the medical care he needs?" "If I accept your help," he said slowly, "what does that make me?" "It makes you a father who loves his son more than his own ego," Claire replied without hesitation. "If you're going to pay for Sam's surgery, then I work it off. We make this a business arrangement." Claire's smile was radiant with relief. "I happen to have a 1967 Mustang that's been sitting in my garage for 2 years. Luke couldn't help but laugh. "Lady, there's no such thing as minor work on a 40-year-old Mustang." "Perfect," she said. That should cover the surgery costs and then some. She extended her hand for a handshake, but when Luke took it, neither let go. Claire, Luke said, his voice rougher than usual. I need you to understand something. What happened today? It wasn't fake for me. Not entirely. Her breath caught slightly. What do you mean? I mean when we were dancing, when Sam asked if we were a real family. None of that felt like acting. And I need to know if it felt real to you, too. Claire's eyes searched his face. It felt more real than anything I've experienced in years. She whispered, But Luke, I don't want you to feel obligated to me because of what happened 7 years ago. If there's something between us, it has to be separate from all of that. What if it can't be separated? Luke asked. What if the reason I pulled you out of that car and the reason you found your way to my garage is because we were supposed to find each other? Before Claire could answer, Sam's voice called out from the living room. Dad? Miss Claire? Are you guys okay in there? We're fine, buddy. Luke called back. Are you talking about getting married? Sam asked with devastating directness. Because I think you should. Miss Claire makes you smile different, and she's really nice to me even when I don't feel good. Luke felt his face burn red while Claire covered her mouth. Sam, that's not... People don't just... It's complicated. Why is it complicated? Sam asked. You like her. She likes you. She likes me. I like her. Seems pretty simple. Claire appeared in the doorway behind Luke. Your son has a point, she said quietly. Maybe adults make things more complicated than they need to be. Claire, are you saying... ? I'm saying that I've spent 7 years looking for you without even knowing it. I'm saying that in one day you and Sam have made me feel more at home than I have anywhere else in my entire life. Sam clapped his hands together with glee. Does that mean Miss Claire is going to be my new mum? They'd been talking around the possibility of a relationship, but Sam had jumped straight to the logical conclusion. Sweetie, Claire said, moving to sit beside Sam. That's something that would have to happen slowly, over time. Your dad and I would need to get to know each other better. But you already know each other. Sam pointed out. Dad saved you from the car crash, and you saved him from being sad and lonely. That's like a fairy tale. Luke found himself laughing despite the surreal turn the evening had taken. Sam, real life isn't quite like fairy tales. Like what? Sam challenged. Like where we'd live, Luke said. Miss Claire has a big, important job in the city. Miss Claire could work from here, Sam said, matter-of-factly. She has a computer, right? As long as we're all together, it doesn't matter where we live. Claire looked at Luke with an expression that was part amazement, part terror. He's thought this through more than we have, she said quietly. Maybe we should listen to him. Are you serious? Luke asked. About all of this? About us. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Claire replied. What if we don't take it slowly? Luke heard himself asking. What if we're both tired of being alone, and what if Sam's right that sometimes the simple answer is the right answer? I'm saying that I've been half in love with you since you walked into my garage, Luke said, the words coming out in a rush. I'm saying that watching you with Sam today showed me what we've both been missing. I'm saying that maybe 7 years was long enough to wait. Sam bounced on the couch cushions. Does that mean you're going to propose? I'm sorry, Claire gasped, tears streaming down her face. This is just so surreal. This morning I woke up alone in a hotel room, dreading a wedding. Tonight I'm sitting in the home of the man who saved my life, talking about marriage with his 9-year-old son as our relationship counselor. Sometimes the best things happen when you're not looking for them, Luke said, moving to sit beside Claire. Or when you've been looking for them for 7 years without knowing it. Claire added softly. Sam reached out and took both their hands, pulling them together. So are we going to be a family? He asked. Because I really want us to be a family. And I think my heart would work better if I wasn't worried about being alone anymore. The simple honesty hit both adults like a physical blow. Yeah, buddy, Luke said, his voice thick with emotion. I think we're going to be a family. Really, really? Sam asked, looking between them with shining eyes. Really, really? Claire confirmed, leaning over to kiss the top of his head. If that's what we all want. Luke looked at Claire over their son's head, and the phrase felt surprisingly right. So I guess this means our fake relationship just became real, he said. I guess it does, Claire replied, her smile brighter than any expensive lighting had been. Though I think we should probably still go on some actual dates. Can I come on the dates too? Sam asked hopefully. At least some of them, Luke assured him. We're a package deal, remember? The best kind of package deal, Claire said firmly. And as they sat there on Luke's old couch, hands joined over the boy who'd brought them together, all three felt the profound rightness of it. They'd found something worth more than all of Trevor Hamilton's wealth combined. They'd found each other, and they'd found home. 6 months later, Luke stood in the same garage where this story had begun, but everything was different. The space had been expanded and renovated, with Claire's expertise transforming it into something both functional and beautiful. Sam sat at a small desk, his homework spread around him, his colour much improved after successful surgery. "Mom's home?" he called out as Claire's car pulled in, the word rolling off his tongue naturally. Claire emerged wearing jeans and one of Luke's old work shirts, looking more beautiful than she ever had in designer clothes. "How are my 2 favourite men?" she asked, kissing Sam's forehead, and then Luke with a kiss that still sent electricity through his system. "Good day?" Luke asked, noting the satisfaction in her eyes. "Great day. And I have news," she continued, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The kind of news that's going to make our family a little bigger." Luke's world tilted. "Claire, are you saying—" "I'm saying that in about 7 months, Sam's going to have a little brother or sister." Sam let out a whoop of joy that echoed through the garage. "Really? Really, really? Really, really?" Claire confirmed, laughing as Sam launched himself into her arms. Luke stood frozen, overwhelmed by emotions he couldn't name. He crossed the space between them, wrapping both Claire and Sam in his arms. "I love you," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Both of you. All of you. Believe it," Claire whispered against his chest, "because this is just the beginning." As they stood there in the garage where their story had started, surrounded by the evidence of the life they'd built together, all three understood that sometimes the most extraordinary love stories begin with the simplest acts of kindness. Luke had saved Claire from a burning car 7 years ago, but in the end, they'd saved each other from something far more dangerous than fire. They'd saved each other from loneliness, from the fear that real love was just something that happened in fairy tales. And now, with Sam's laughter filling the air and new life growing between them, they knew that their own fairy tale was just beginning.